is the 35th annual National Girls and Women in Sports Day. Every year, this celebration inspires girls and women to play, be active, and realize their full power. This year, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we're celebrating virtually to lead her forward. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce our panel of amazing women leaders from our Middlebury community.
Hello, I'm Abigail Copeland. I'm an alpine ski coach here at Middlebury College.
Hi, I'm Chelsey Giuliani. I am field hockey coach at Middlebury High School.
Hi, my name is Ellie. I am a junior at Middlebury College, and I am a varsity swimmer.
Hi, everyone. My name's Emily. I'm a senior at Middlebury College, and I play for the women's tennis team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katharine DeLorenzo. I coach the field hockey team here at Middlebury College.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Stetson. I coach the Mount Abraham Union High School varsity field hockey team and teach at Mount Abraham Union High School in Bristol, Vermont.
Hi, I am Missy Foote, and I am now retired, but when I was at Middlebury College, I coached field hockey, basketball, swimming, and women's lacrosse.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Ali Paquette. I work in athletic communications at Middlebury College, and I am honored to be serving as the moderator for today's panel. What do you say, ladies? Ready to kick things off? All right. We're going to start things out today with a little bit of fun. So I have a question for the entire group. Curious, who were the athletes that you looked up to as a kid and why?
I had a great aunt who, because my mother didn't play any sports, she was in that group of women who grew up in the 50s where, you know, they were just not afforded the opportunity to play varsity sports. So I had a great aunt, a generation earlier than she, a gay woman who was a professional golfer. So she was a golf pro at a country club in the 30s and 40s, a professional ice skater, skated in the Ice Capades, a PE teacher in Glens Falls High School, and the field hockey coach there. She was just an amazing woman, a master gardener, and I looked up to her for everything, including her love of sports. And I always wanted to be just like her.
Katharine, similar to you, I feel like my role models as I was growing up were my older sisters. So it's like the women that were closest to us. But my sisters, I have two older sisters who also are swimmers, or I should say swimmers, because they have retired since they graduated college. But like seeing them and the passion that they had for the sport and athletics and just like putting their all into every single race was something that I really looked up to. I think it was something that I saw like they can do it all, so can I. So not only were my sisters just like role models in my life, but they were also mentors in terms of my athletic journey to Middlebury and being a part of Middlebury's athletic community here.
I would say similar to Katharine, there were no female athletes for me to idolize as a young child. I was not a beneficiary of Title IX in my playing days, but my grandmother was an amazing athlete, and I was always compared to her and told how much I was like her. She would rather be on the golf course golfing with the men and my grandfather than anything. Also an amazing gardener, a beautiful swimmer, and I aspired to be like her, although my mother was nothing like my grandmother and not an athlete at all.
I'm going to follow Missy, and I'm going to use my grandmother. My mother's mother was an amazing athlete, but I think amazing woman for the times. She was somebody who went all the way through college, which was unheard of at the time. She also worked for the American Red Cross during World War I and drove an ambulance in the European theater. And she was always fascinated with me becoming an athlete and saying, you just go ahead and keep doing that, and if that's something you're interested in and you love it, go ahead and pursue it. And on top of that, she was an amazing swimmer. We used to go to the ocean together, and there wasn't any time that she was always so calm and relaxed and just a very smooth swimmer. And she always used to tell me how I'm living in a great time. It's going to be a lucky time for women. So I really appreciate all that she shared with me as a young lady.
Well, I didn't have any like personal female athletes that I was really close to growing up. Some of my biggest like tennis role models and inspirations were definitely the Williams sisters. For one, in tennis, and I think for, maybe like generalizing across all sports, but like it's very hard to dominate a sport for such a long period of time. And for tennis, like Federer and Nadal, when I was young, and Djokovic would dominate for like a decade. But the Williams sisters were like right up there with them, winning just as many Grand Slams and having just as much like name recognition. So it was amazing to see like two like really strong, like confident female athletes dominating like a sport for so long and gaining respect from like all sorts of people, like not just in the tennis community, which I think is really awesome. And then on top of that, they're both like big like advocates for kind of like female equality in sports. So like Serena Williams, for example, like really strong and confident and like beautiful woman. And like whenever any interviewers or anybody like makes a comment like regarding like maybe like a negative like take on her like body image, like she would always like very respectfully but also like very bluntly kind of like respond back. And so that was always just amazing to see growing up from a young age, and like still watching them play tennis to this day, like 12 years later, is really amazing.
I think, like Emily, I can't speak to family ties in terms of my athletic influences, but certainly I had teammates and older athletes beginning in high school that I really admired. I have to say that KP was one of them. You know, she was just that much older than me. We were never able to play on the same team, but I remember watching her play and be really impacted by her style of play. I've always been super attracted to just like that workhorse athlete. And that is certainly something I saw in her a few years down the line, an athlete named Molly Sheehan. Some of you may know her. She's still in the area. Same thing, not flashy, just put in the work, and was super inspirational, great teammate, all of those things. Outside of my personal contacts, I actually really looked up to Carrie Strug, you know, that famous Olympic gymnast who just kind of gritted it out. Again, that like workhorse mentality that I've really always been drawn to.
I would say Pernilla Wiberg, but then people would be like, who is that? So I won't even talk about her, but she was an amazing Swedish skier. She was awesome. I will say that growing up ski racing, you're always kind of racing with folks that are a little bit older than you. And I would say that I definitely looked up to all those older girls that were wicked fast. And the great thing about those particular individuals is that they just were super supportive of all the younger racers. And so you'd be up there like Googling at them at the start, being like, oh my gosh, they're so fast. And then they'd be coming around to get their jacket and they'd be like, hey, go get it, go fast. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm being supported by way older, way faster individuals. So just the community growing up in ski racing was really supportive and really encouraging. And I would say that that's kind of what kept me in it, and something that I definitely missed when I retired from the sport myself after college. I spent a year away from it, and I was like, wow, there's something here that I definitely miss. And it's for sure the sport, but it's also that community of support and encouraging individuals.
Well, thank you all. That definitely takes me back to my childhood, thinking a little bit about, all the incredible women in my life and those that were playing professionally that I looked up to. I played soccer growing up, so Mia Hamm is definitely a name that kind of came immediately to my mind with the U.S. women's soccer team and all their successes pretty early on in my childhood. So that definitely takes me down memory lane. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. Given that Middlebury College and the town of Middlebury is in Vermont, it's a pretty white state. And so one of the questions that we have for this group that's really important right now in terms of diversity and inclusion is how can we increase participation in playing and coaching among women of color?
One of the things that we have done to make the sport of field hockey more accessible, which is one step in the direction of getting more girls of color playing it, is to have more women of color coaching it and have more women of color in administrative positions making decisions about how our coaches are going to learn, how our coaches are going to spend their community service time. And so I'll just add one piece to it that is an initiative of the NFHCA, the National Field Hockey Coaches Association right now, is to profess or to require all of its members to provide 60 hours of pro bono coaching or contribution to a like service that is providing free coaching to girls of color.
So as a ski team, we've been working with this foundation called Yes Boston, and it's a youth enrichment program. And we've kind of partnered with them to help make winter sports more accessible to the BIPOC community. Ski racing is definitely a very white privileged sport, and it's really challenging trying to find diversity within the sport. So through some of these different programs that Yes Boston provides, they take folks all over the place to little ski areas and provide them with ski equipment and ski lessons. And it's been a really neat program to kind of follow and support. But obviously we need to do way more.
Similarly, in lacrosse, lacrosse is a very white privileged sport as well, similar to skiing. But the grassroots organizations that are focusing on drawing and facilitating learning opportunities for children to learn the sport. So people of color, Indigenous, any populations you can think of are really where the rubber hits the road. With all the things we're already talking about, coaches who look like the people that are playing, encouraging those players to learn the avenues for how to go farther in their sport, and also really just teaching them how to love playing a sport, whether it's lacrosse or field hockey or skiing. Those grassroots efforts are what I think are really helping to move things along these days.
Yeah, thank you, Missy. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. What we've been seeing a lot recently is a lot of these organizations that are sprouting out that are really aimed at reaching markets that are not traditional for those sports. And that's so important. And the access piece, Abby, that you talked about as well. So that's great to hear that so many organizations that all of us are connected to from our sports are really thinking about this and trying to tackle it head on. So the next question I have is for Abby. Abby, you coach a sport that's both men and women. So just kind of curious if you can talk to this group a little bit about some challenges that might arise coaching both men and women, any differences in coaching men and women at the same time.
Where I find the challenge is that it makes me wonder if the reason we don't see more women in alpine ski coaching is because there is that perspective that maybe it is harder to be a women's coach for a male, or there's some sort of perspective that is hindering women from entering that coaching field. I mean, when I first started coaching in college, there was one other woman coaching in college in alpine ski racing. There are now quite a few more, but that to me was like such a shocker. I'm looking around at NCAAs and there is literally one other woman. And that has always been like, why aren't there more women coaching this sport? Like, there is no difference between how I coach a male and how I coach a female. I mean, it's also challenging. It's just challenging to coach in general because everybody has a different way of learning. And so you're just always constantly trying to figure out a new way to communicate to someone a different thought or a different skill. And it really just has nothing to do with gender. It's just that everyone is different and you kind of have to tailor your coaching to different people. But it does get me thinking, why aren't there more women in alpine ski coaching? What is going on here? I don't know. I didn't mean to come up with another question, but that has just, the answer to that has always evaded me.
Yeah, thanks, Abby, for that. I think that's a question many of us have probably had in our own sports. Looking to the sidelines and seeing a lot of male coaches, I'm sure in the early days, and so on. So that definitely brings me to my next question, which is for Missy and Mary. I'm curious how you've seen girls and women's sports evolve in the last 30 years. What are some of the critical changes that you've seen, both with the sport, coaching, really anything that you've seen in the last 30 years that have been significant changes?
Well, I'll jump in. Even though I lived through it and I was part of it, I'm still surprised to think that one American cannot be given the same opportunity as another American simply because of the color of their skin or their gender. And as a college athlete in the 1970s, I remember hearing a little bit about Title IX, which gave opportunity for participation in athletics to more women. And I was told that as a field hockey player in college, that our team could now use the weight room, the men's weight room. We had no interest in using that men's weight room, so we didn't. But by 1977, when I came to Middlebury to start my athletic coaching career, a collegiate athletic coaching career, the impact of Title IX really came into full view for me at that point. Stereotypes abounded that athletics masculinized women. Women didn't know how to compete, so why should they even be given equal opportunities? And then there was the radical thought at that time that women would deserve to learn the same lessons from sports that men did. And we were just sort of coming into that idea that a woman could even have a little tiny bit part of her identity come from athletic prowess. And so when I first started coaching at Middlebury in 1977, I was hired to coach field hockey and swimming. And within 2 weeks, I was asked to coach the newly formed women's basketball team. And at that time, I said yes. And at that time, there were 8 sports for women, and I coached 3 of those. When Title IX became law, there were 300,000 girls that were playing sports, and now there are over 1 million girls that are playing sports in high school. So that's a big jump that mirrors a lot of what our society is thinking, and those stereotypes, again, are finally, those borders are blending a little bit. We have an obligation to know the history that women's sports has gone through to make sure that this sort of thing doesn't continue to happen again, or we still continue to make sure there's opportunity for women. Of the 38 national championship teams at Middlebury, 24 of those are from women's teams. So I can say that we've come a long way.
I'll piggyback on what Missy came. I was able to be a happy beneficiary of Title IX. I earned a college scholarship to play field hockey at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. At that time, the NCAA only dealt with men. They didn't deal with women. It was the Association for Interscholastic Athletics for Women, I think was the AIAW was the title. And it wasn't until like 1983 that the NCAA and the AIAW merged. I would say that, you know, there was that perception that if you were an athlete, you were a tomboy. There were a lot of things that were perceived. I was fortunate that I was raised in an urban area where there was a lot of opportunity for women to participate in athletics, and not just things that they thought were socially appropriate for women. When I arrived at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, there was a women's athletic director and then the athletic director. In terms of like the basketball and the football program are the big money earners there. They were the reason I had a scholarship. There was no question about that. But the thing that Missy sort of hinted at, and which is evolved and great now, is the training perceptions that this, you know, if you use the weight room, you'd be bulky and big, and you didn't want to have that perceived image as a female athlete. But now I really feel like the evolution of athletics is a place to raise, is a place where women can become strong, beautiful young women, become self-confident, and use all those variables that we present in the athletic arena, those life's lessons. They're just so valuable for girls. And yeah, the numbers have increased, but also the opportunities. It's not even, you know, an eyelash isn't even batted right now that if there's opportunities at your rec program, it's not only the boys can go and play that sport. But I think opportunity is just definitely abounded. I'm so excited for my granddaughter, and as I was so excited for my own girls that I raised, that they have these opportunities now. It's just, I think it's great. It's awesome.
Thank you, Missy and Mary. I think one thing both of you touched on, and Mary, you went into this a little bit, but was rec sports and youth sports and how that plays a role in girls and women advancing, you know, through high school, playing sports, still in college. So I'd like to open this up to anybody, but maybe Chelsey, you first, since you're pretty involved with youth sports. What's the importance of youth sports for girls, and how does that help them, you know, find their path later in life?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to attack this question from a couple different angles. First as a coach, but then also as a parent. So certainly as a coach, one of the reasons, you know, I became so passionate about youth sports was to provide a future for my high school program. You know, being able to build a relationship with a kindergartner who I then am able to see progress and instill those foundational skills, you know, definitely gives me hope for our program in the future. And it gives me access to relationship building, which I think is just so fundamental in keeping a girl interested in sports and making them, or helping them make the decision to become a lifelong athlete. Certainly as a parent, so when I see my children playing sports, I have 2 daughters and a son. When I see my daughters participating in sports, you know, the things that make me excited about that are, number one, my children are, you know, living a healthy and active lifestyle. They're building relationships, they're goal setting, they're accomplishing hard things, they're kind of wading through the waters of interpersonal relationships with teammates, coaches. You know, they're working with people of different ages, oftentimes, and that has a huge amount of value. They're having fun. I homeschool, so they're also learning from someone who isn't me, which is amazing, and learning new things. So the same things that I celebrate in watching my children play, I celebrate in the children that I'm coaching as well.
Thank you, Chelsey. That was great to hear, both from the perspective of a coach, but also as a parent. So you talked about a lot of the positives for youth sports and girls going through youth sports. So I want to turn over to Emily and Ellie to just chat a little bit about some of the challenges girls and young women face, and maybe challenges that you've specifically faced navigating the sports world, you know, whether it was in high school, college, making the decision to play sports in college. Really just want to hear from you a little bit from your personal experiences, some challenges.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I face and a lot of female athletes face growing up playing a sport is that like we're often like judged on our aesthetics and physical appearance to a higher degree than a lot of male athletes. And so like body positivity is a big thing that could lead to like low self-esteem or like maybe like irregular or bad like eating habits and things like that. And I think that it's just like really important to remember like our bodies are just as incredible, and that like if you are considered like more muscular or like judged and people like maybe call you like manly, like your muscles help you in your sport. They help you every single day like do what you do and like help you achieve what you can achieve that not many people can say, that they, you know, like play a sport at this level or that they can accomplish something at such a like at like a collegiate or professional level. So I feel like that is probably an obstacle that many younger female athletes will face, just like growing up playing a sport.
Kind of going off of that in a little bit more of a tangent kind of way, but the Emily's perspective on like body image is something that is coupled with the media, social media, but also just media in general, I think. And another aspect of the challenges, I believe, is just not seeing the same level of coverage in terms of just like who we see. Like, I don't believe that there is a woman professional athlete out there that has their own shoe that just as popular as Nike's Jordans. Like, you see a Jordan, you know it's a Jordan shoe, and everyone stops to admire it. I don't think we have a shoe. Maybe one of us will be the ones that has a shoe one day named after our namesake. But I think like it's something as simple as that. Like, I think specifically in terms of the swimming world, I think about how it's a no-brainer how amazing Michael Phelps is. He's an incredible athlete, regardless of sport. But at the same time, his success is something that has withstood his career now that he is officially retired and not coming back for another comeback. But like, you think about, I just see all these other Olympians that I looked up to growing up, in addition to my sisters that I mentioned earlier, like Missy Franklin or Natalie Coughlin. And after their careers ended, after they chose to pursue their personal life, start a family, like we don't ever really hear about them. And I think that kind of goes into the larger question of how there's just a lot of social pressure in terms of how much are you willing to sacrifice for your sport, that I feel like that question isn't asked as much to males. I know that person myself, every increment of the way from middle school, high school, college, my coaches, some who actually were female, were asking me, do I really want to continue on? Like, what's going to happen next? Is it really worth investing more money in something that I'm going to just go through college to, and then I'll start a family? And then it's like, well, I actually have other aspirations other than starting a family, which I do want to do one day, but it's not like something that I don't think my male counterpart next to me would be asked about whether or not they really want to think about it before they start a family or how long they want to go. So I think that's something that is a challenge that young girls face from the second they choose to really dive into something in athletics, and something that continues to be like a shadow behind them that's always there throughout the whole entire career as an athlete.
One more thing. I feel like the phrases like a girl or like for a girl are like phrases that we as a society just need to get rid of. And I feel like if you're a young female athlete and I don't know, you go to the weight room or something, someone's like, wow, like you're really strong. And then they add like for a girl. It's like, well, that kind of doesn't make like wouldn't make me feel like that strong. Like, okay, like why can't I just be strong, period? Or it's like, wow, you run really fast for a girl. It's like, okay, but like, running like is time. Like if the time is fast, like I just run really fast. I feel like those are just like some phrases that roll off people's tongue a little too easily. And it's kind of like there is a connotation when you add those phrases at the end of a sentence. And like people do remember it more than you think that they would.
Emily and Ellie, I saw everyone's head nodding as each of you were talking and bringing up specific examples here. And I also saw a lot of laughs when Ellie was talking about that we don't have a shoe. So Ellie, if you have a shoe, I think we would all buy the shoe. So thank you for that. No, in all seriousness, I think both of you, all of you shined a light on some critical challenges and issues that all of us face at, growing up, from the time we're growing up and through, college and after. So taking a little bit of a step back and looking at our path as women and how far we've come. Katharine, I want to ask you a little bit about how you benefited as a college player from Title IX.
The biggest impact that Title IX had on me near my college days was that it was likely responsible for the graduate assistant position that I took when I left my first steps after college. And I was a music major and a violinist, so I actually took the GA position in Indiana so that I could keep pursuing a music degree, but I could pay for my graduate degree by coaching. And I just quickly realized that all I could think about was the team I was helping coach, even in the midst of rehearsals and theory classes and things like that. So I switched my major in the middle of my first year, and I've been coaching ever since.
Thank you, Katharine. I mean, it's kind of incredible to think about if that GA position hadn't ever been created, and just thinking about your impact here at Middlebury and all of that. So it's just incredible to think about. So the final question I have for the group, want to throw it out there for everyone to answer. Kind of want to leave this on a positive note and just ask, what is one way that you think that people can help support girls and women in sports?
One way is to ask young girls, how do sports make them feel? What do they love about it?
Come to games, come to meets, watch, cheer, be proud of, and let them know.
Yeah, I feel like the entire town of Middlebury should shift their tailgates from the high school football team to the Middlebury College field hockey team. That's where we should be tailgating. National championships. Yeah, but I agree with Missy. Watching those games, watching women's sports, getting excited about women's sports, and bringing the next generation with you.
I would encourage us that the athletes that we coach to give back to the sport that they have a passion for. So I always try to say to my players, you be thankful for the things you were able to do. And now it's up to you to give this back to, and we have a youth program, and I usually point towards that field. How many ways can you give back to other younger players? Maybe not in the sport of field hockey, but in another sport you're passionate about. But the only way it will get better and stronger is if the next generation gives back to the sport that gave them, you know, difficulties aside, a great opportunity. And it also encourages girls to have a passion and share a passion with people. And it's important, if you're going to be successful in anything, to have a passion. It's passion that drives us. I really feel that.
Mary, I love that. Just like the idea of that intergenerational community of women, and it doesn't have to be within your sport. I think like seeing this group of women, and like you guys are passing something along to Emily and I can easily see that just like from this one conversation, and how we'll bring that back to our teams currently at college, but also what we bring towards other young women that we come across.
I think it's so important to have the mentors, because I have gone to 3 or 4 as an athlete of Katharine's field hockey camps when I was in high school. And I'll tell you what,
I'm still bitter you didn't come to Middlebury.
that
Abby.
woman single-handedly, with her enthusiasm and her attention to detail with every single athlete, made me want to coach that way when I realized that I wanted to coach. Just making every individual that you coach feel super special and feel like they matter. And that's exactly what Katharine always has done. Definitely when it dawned on me, I was like, oh, I think I do want to be a coach. Like, I was like, and Katharine DeLorenzo is that woman that I want to coach like. So I think having mentors and really putting yourself out there as a female coach and making yourself available as a mentor is also really, really important.
Yeah, just like Katharine was kind of like a role model for Abigail, just showing like young girls that there are female athletes out there that look like you, that are pursuing the passion that you want to pursue and playing the sport that you want, that you are playing at the highest competitive level. Like, they're all there. Like Sarah Fuller, who's the kicker for the Vanderbilt football team. Like, if you want to be if you want to play football, you can play football. So there's a lot more positive female athlete role models out there, and I think it's just important to kind of like keep shedding light that there are those role models to look up to now.
I think what we're all talking about is that moment when we ourselves recognized that we were capable, and we're talking about how we can mentor that in other young women. There's nothing like that moment when you realize you're capable, whether it's, you know, in an academic pursuit or an athletic pursuit, but there's this spark that happens where you gain confidence in yourself and realize, and I saw it in my granddaughter today, who's 3 and suddenly could stand up skiing down, you know, the little hill, but she was a different person in 2 minutes from the one she had been before. And there's a spark that happens that will carry over into other endeavors for her. And that's why we want young girls to play sports.
Thank you, all of you. The common thread at the end of giving back, I truly believe giving back moves all of us forward. And that's the theme for this year's National Girls and Women in Sports Day. It's Lead Her Forward. So I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join us on the panel today. For those of you who are tuning in, thank you for taking the day to celebrate National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. We look forward to seeing you next year.